Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this Saturday morning show, Rental Reboot. And I think really the best way to start 2024, and we're going to run through our top 10 New Year resolutions for landlords and investors this morning and see how you could prepare for the year ahead at this point. And I mean, and it's no surprise, Jim, and we all know it, that most people break their New Year's resolutions within the first month of 2024. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Planning ahead for the year and sticking to it.
Join the club. Join the club. Most people, yeah, absolutely. Me included. You know, I'm not be all and end all. I've started with the best intentions in mind, and then 2 weeks into it, it's like, oh God, I can't go to the gym anymore.
I'm actually, yeah, I know. Like, I'm going to the gym after this. I didn't get up that early, and like obviously people do the.
Oh, is this a New Year's resolution then?
It's not, but I've not been since the tail end of summer because it's like you kind of just sort of. But anyway, I am after this. But it's hardly surprising that people do give up on the New Year resolutions, given that most of them are based around your health and your fitness, and it means obviously getting up to the gym at the crack of dawn and cold mornings as well. I mean, the frost's out this morning. It's freezing out with the dog earlier. It's really cold this morning. So, and it's the darkest time of year as well. So the mornings aren't great. So things like fitness in the gym do fall by the wayside very quickly. So it's hardly a recipe for success when you plan to make things like this your New Year's resolution.
Yeah.
But you can start new habits as a landlord and an investor without the need to get up at 5 a.m., starve yourself, not having any treats. And some of the most valuable areas to look at are, first and foremost, I think, keeping your buy-to-let profitable.
Yep.
Also looking at things like maybe prepping for net zero and energy efficiency, making tax returns more manageable. A lot of people will be rushing at this month and doing it at the last minute and doing their tax returns and things. So make that more manageable throughout the year so that when you get to January or obviously ahead of January, you're prepared. Also treasuring your time. We've done a whole show about time just recently, Jim, and really making the most of your time as well. And future-proofing your business. And that's all about obviously forecasting and making sure that you're on track. So as luck would have it, you'll find that this week our blog that's attached to the link and we're going to discuss today is how to start 2024 with a solid outlook for the year ahead and even beyond that as well.
I'm not really sure of it. I'm not really sure it's a good start to 2024, especially for rentals in Scotland, considering the legislation's been announced and the headline data has already come through from the Scottish Government about what they intend to do from April onwards. And I'm kind of thinking, how you have to think about over the next couple of days about what's the fallout going to be. You know, what could potentially happen in the buy-to-let market. I mean, you know, the only person that's suffering here in the buy-to-let market, let's not talk about the landlords and ourselves, but the people suffer the most are the most vulnerable tenants, because the rent restrictions not doing anything for vulnerable tenants. All it's doing is stopping landlords from actually investing in the sector. Therefore, it's limiting supply. Therefore, it's making it worse. Therefore, as well, costs are going up for landlords, and they're not able to increase their rents when it comes to, you know, renewal and it comes to a review to take into account and keep up with that. So therefore, they just sell, and it makes it worse. So you've got to a situation where we're in a catch-22 as landlords and you know, as letting agents as well. Yeah. This is the thing I don't understand. Somebody came on to one of the forums the other day. I think it's Scottish Landlords Network, about the fact that a letting agent was going to be charging them X amount for managing their property, charging them X amount for this and X amount for that. And they were, you know, everybody was having a wee complaint and a wee dig at the letting agent. And I just popped on and goes, if you look at most letting agents' annual accounts, because most of them are limited companies. If you look up Companies House and you look up, because you get the name of their company, and even though whatever their name is, you go down to the bottom of their website and you look at privacy policy. If you click on the privacy policy, it comes up with the actual name of their company. So, you know, for example, we're called Fife Properties Limited, Tigger and Timmy Limited, Parker Housing Limited, another company, but we trade as just Fife Properties. So if you put in Fife Properties, it'll probably, you know, the chances are it'll come up. But Tigger and Timmy is actually the lettings division, Fife Properties sales division. So you might actually get the wrong idea about how well letting agents are actually doing, and think it's printing, it's all it's old rope for money for old rope. Yeah, money for old rope, but that's not the case. It's like, if you look at most of them, a lot of them, their net worth's zero.
Yeah.
Their only net worth for a letting agent is an intrinsic value of the book for managed properties once they sell it on. It's 1.5 times the managed fees a year. That's the benchmark. Anything between 1 to 2, depending on what it is, but generally it's about 1.5. And that's all a letting agent has going for them. Apart from that, they're squeezed all the time, because literally on a property that you're getting, I don't know, you're getting what, £500 a month in rent, you're only getting 60 quid in a letting, in a managed fee at 12%. So you're getting 60 quid, and literally one tenant just needs a problem with their property, and you've lost that 60 quid. You've lost that 60 quid within an hour and a half, because the running costs to run a letting agency now are horrendous because of all the bureaucracy and legislation that's been brought in over the last 10 years, I would say. And the last 5 years particularly has got really bad. Now, you could have your violin out like Ross does, from the Greens, and you go, oh, what a shame for letting agents and landlords. And it's like, that's all very well, but if it wasn't for letting agents and landlords, then you would have no investment in the private rented sector. You'd have nobody to run the private rented sector, and then it would be complete chaos, because the government hasn't got enough houses to house the most vulnerable people in our society, and people that are desperately needing social housing.
I know.
The blame, let's do the blame game right now. The blame lies at the lack of coherent housing policy for both governments, the UK government, which is English government, and the Scottish government, and even the Welsh government, even the Irish government, to actually forecast and build the required amount of housing, affordable housing and social housing they needed over the last 10 to 15 to 20 years since the sell-off in the 1980s. They've just not done it.
I couldn't agree with you more. And I think, as you talk about that, Jim, it's so apparent to us as landlords and letting agents and things that it baffles us why they can't see that at the other side, and what's actually happening and how this is going to play out if it keeps going down.
Well, they can't see it because it's short-term politics. It's short-term politics. No politician, probably except the Conservative Party, want to publicly say we need to support private landlords just now in order to keep the sector buoyant, in order to keep housing all the people that don't have a house, and all the intake of people from overseas that don't have somewhere either. And because this is what's happening, immigration's gone sky high as well. They can't cope, and the pressure on the system is immense, and they don't have and not have put enough money or forecast enough money put aside in order to look after us. And I would say that, you notice how I said that, in order to look after us and people in our elderly age. They've got no resources. They went to the cupboard, as the old Mother Hubbard went to the cupboard and found out the cupboard was bare. There's nothing, zero, zilch left. They've sold off all the gold. They did actually sell off all the gold. Gordon Brown sold off all the gold reserves. We have got nothing left. As a nation, as a country, we've got nothing. We've got no net worth. Our national debt to GDP is something like about 85 to 90%. It's horrendous.
Yeah, that is quite bad.
If you were in a business yourself, you'd be like, I'm out of business.
I'm done. And just to double back on obviously the changes in legislation thing, I was reading through it yesterday, and I was looking. Obviously, we're on several forums like the Scottish Property Network and things, and you could see a lot of the landlords and investors that are on there and how much it's affecting them and their mindset, and it's pushing them in the wrong direction of, that's just going to end up with a lot of people leaving the sector. But anyway, we'll go back to the topic of today, which is obviously starting 2024 on a good note, and the 10 points that we're going to run through today, just to kind of prep for the year ahead, safeguard, and obviously forecast even ahead of 2024 and into the year after that. And first and foremost, I think it's looking at your buy-to-let portfolio, treating it as a business, and putting your business first. So Landlord forums, as I just said, are full of investors experiencing financial difficulty or having frozen the rents on their properties, and they're having to absorb the costs and higher interest rates and changes in taxation, just like we've spoke about there. There's so much going on and so much changes. So good tenants are absolutely worth keeping, and balancing that compassion and profit can sometimes be tricky because you're trying to, obviously, if you've got a good tenant, you're trying to keep them happy. You're also trying to, I don't like the word profit, but you're obviously trying to keep it running as a business. So,
Yeah,
but if you're forced to sell up and take another rental home out of the market, who does that serve? No one,
I know.
especially not
What
tenant.
this is you notice the dialect here, and I cringed at the word profit as well.
I know,
Why are we cringing at profit now?
I know.
Profit is required in order to maintain a business. Profit is required in order to maintain a charity. Profit is
Yeah,
required in order to maintain a social organization. It's got that is the whole point. Crisis make a profit. Shelter make a profit. The government has to make a profit. It's just called a different word. They call it a surplus. And that's all it is. But
dress it
for
up.
some reason, we've got this rhetoric from everybody that profit is a dirty word. It goes back to the old thing about Wall Street and Michael Douglas, that greed is good, Gordon
Yeah,
Gekko. And it's like people think about that and they think this is what it's like. It's not. You need a profit. This is an accountant speaking. I am an accountant as well. You need a profit in order to reinvest in the business in the future. If you don't have a profit, you can't move any further forward. There's no money left to do anything. This is why we've not got a profit as the government just now. This is why every single month we've got a deficit, a deficit, a deficit. This is why they report it. And this is why other countries then go, wait a minute, we don't want to invest in the UK because they're making losses every month. Deficits. That's what it is. It's a loss. Let's call it what it is. It's a loss. You don't want to make a deficit every single. You have to make a profit in order to run the business properly, in order to reinvest, in order to do things. Where is the money going to come from if you're going to renew a kitchen? Where's it going to come from? Profit.
yeah,
If you're going to renew the bathroom, where's it going to come from, Richard?
profit.
Yeah. If your heating system goes down and you need your plumber to come out and do it, how are you going to pay the plumber? Where's it going to come from?
Yeah, you need that profit from your portfolio to have money set aside and have that availability to put back in and then obviously reinvest as well, and then keep your tenants happy, keep the properties up to code. I mean, they're bringing in all this legislation and all this thing. I mean, some of it's quite expensive. I mean, we're going to talk about energy efficiency, and I know it's moving a bit slower than it was intended to, but I mean that could become costly as well. And so there's a lot of factors that, and profit is the thing that facilitates you
Thank,
or enables you to do that.
thank goodness they've had a rethink on energy efficiency.
Yeah,
Because I tell you what, the last person standing switched the light out on the buy-to-let sector completely,
I know.
on the way out. Because the reality is, there's no way we could have reinvested to get our energy efficiency up to that level. All of a sudden, for years and years and years, our energy efficiency was fine. And then suddenly somebody comes along and says, within the next 5 years, we're going to have to do this. It's like, 5 years? It's not going to be done in 5 years. You've got to then retrain a whole group of people. You've got to find them in the first place in order to go into that sector and retrain for that sector and actually form businesses for that sector. But it's all to start in 5 years. Who's going to hang about and do that? Who's going to hang about and purposely go, I'm going to retrain and spend all that time and effort, and then when the legislation comes along, I'm going to be ready? They're not going to be getting paid when they're training. What business is going to invest in people doing that? They're not. They wait till it happens and then they go ahead and do it. So this is another naivety from the governments. And this is like a monathon this morning.
But then that's it's the next point, and it all falls under obviously the governments. They've committed to this net zero, obviously, and things, and obviously preparation for net zero and things is something that obviously they're thinking about, and that's why it's having a knock-on effect. And like you say, the legislation for more energy efficient rental homes and things, it's obviously been postponed and moving a lot slowly, but we can be sure that in essence it will come around at some point. And landlords
It's coming, but they kick the can down the road every now and again. And this is why I never ran out and changed anything, because I learnt my lesson from the electrical safety standards legislation as well. It was like they have no coherent strategy. They open their mouth. They let this is they as the government. The government politicians open their mouth. They let their belly rumble, and the first thing that comes out, they then decide that, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. Let's go with that. With no coherent strategy about how this is going to be implemented, who's going to do it, who is going to do it. We've got full employment in an economy like that right now, and everybody's doing a job. Then that means, so who's going to do this extra job on top? If you've got no hours left in the working week, how are you meant to do anything else?
Yeah,
this is. Again, we're coming back to there's no coherent strategy about how this is going to happen, and we just keep kicking the can down the road. And they upset the culture just now. They upset the system by doing that. That's the problem. So yes, the cost of work will undoubtedly soar when the bill passes, as the landlords scramble to catch up. So you usually find, for everybody out there, you usually find that what happens for most things, it's always a light touch approach when it gets implemented.
Yeah.
So it's not you've got to have your stuff done by then. And the legislation says you could be fined up to £5,000. But remember, it says you could be fined up to £5,000. Could be. What it is when they find out who you are, they then say, look, you need to do this within a reasonable time now. When are you going to do it? Send us some sort of strategy about how you intend to implement that, and then work towards that. And that's all we want you to do. So that's a light touch approach. You know how I know that? Because I did exactly the same with landlord registration.
Yeah.
So don't worry about net zero as if you're a landlord or investor out there. If you're a tenant, there'll not be that much disruption. It will be done over a period of time, and we'll work with it and we'll move towards it. So this is a warning to landlords right now that net zero requirement will come in. So when you get changeover of tenants, you're probably better looking at doing upgrades at that point in time.
Things that could bring you up to a rating of C on an EPC, or as close to as you can when you've got that opportunity to do works without somebody being in.
What have we been doing, Richard, with refurbs that I've been doing recently? When we've been doing refurbs, I've immediately looked at let's do the refurb, but let's look at making sure we can get up to another level on the energy efficiency.
Yeah.
And because there's no point in doing the refurb and then realizing I've got to poke a hole in the roof now in order to get in to put more insulation in, because I didn't think about that before when I was refurbing it.
Yeah, and I've got a lot of other landlords following the same consensus. It's like, right, okay, let's take this opportunity and upgrade to a higher EPC band.
Absolutely, definitely. I'll be interested to hear where everybody's tuning in from, because there's a few people on TikTok. So I'll be interested to hear where you're tuning in from on TikTok, and also from our social media channels and Instagram out there as well, and LinkedIn and YouTube
as well.
So we're live streaming on round about 10 channels just now. But overall it'll live stream over about 16 channels this show. But it's interesting. It'll be interesting to hear where people are tuning in from. What's your questions on the buy-to-let market just now? And we are talking about today about the rental reboot. In other words, the start for 2024 with our top 10 New Year's resolutions for landlords. Wise up to tax. This has got to be my thing.
And it's a perfect time of year to talk about it. Yeah.
Imagine me saying that floats my boat tax. Like, folk are going, really? It's coming at the tax year end. We're in January and everybody's scrambling about at the last minute to get their tax return in. Mine's done and dusted. And that's the case. Look, Anne-Marie's from Blackburn in Lancashire. Good morning, Anne-Marie.
Morning, Anne-Marie.
But have family in Glenrothes and Falkland. Yeah, good stuff. Thank you for that. Somebody's in, Agnes says she's in Scotland. Any particular place in Scotland, Agnes? Any region, any town? I'd be interested to hear that. Wise up to tax. Okay, so forget last minute tax panics and please get organised instead. Set a monthly alert on your phone to update a spreadsheet. That's all it takes. People we often think, and I've fallen foul in the beginning myself, we often think all we need to do is just leave it all to the last minute and we'll get it all done. Because it can wait, because it's not really that important until it becomes crisis. So start doing it when it's important, but not really urgent. Because if you start doing it where it's important and then it becomes urgent, it's crisis management. And that causes a lot of stress and heartache for people. So just my top tip for tax is just do it every month. If you're struggling a wee bit and you're not sure how to do your tax and your accounts and your bookkeeping, it's a simple spreadsheet. Make sure, an easy one to do this, make sure everything goes through your bank. Make sure you do everything through your bank, because then you've got to know all the transactions through your bank. And then all you need to do is get the receipts to match the transactions, and then you put them in a pile. So you get your bank statement for December, you look at all your transactions for December, you get all the receipts to match them, okay? Then you put all your receipts together and you stick them in a pile which says December.
Yeah.
And then you put another thing here which says January, just a sheet of paper, January, and then you do the same thing with January, sheet of paper, do the same thing with February, sheet of paper, do the same thing with March. And that's all you need to do. So you've got all your receipts. There's a filing system straight away for you, for everything coming in, everything going out, because you're not going to have a lot, because you only people generally have 1 or 2 buy-to-let. So it's not going to be a lot of transactions, but it can be done. And then what you're doing every single month, you're just updating a spreadsheet. So at the top of the spreadsheet, you're going to have income. So your rents, you're maybe going to have, I don't know if there's any other income you would have coming in, miscellaneous, probably just rents and miscellaneous. That's it. There's only 2 really. At the bottom of your spreadsheet and below that, you're going to have expenditure. So outgoings. You're going to have things like mortgage interest on your bank statement. You're going to have things like any repairs and improvements you made. So repairs and improvements. So mortgage interest, repairs and improvements. Then you're going to have maybe insurance, because you're maybe monthly. You're maybe going to have letting agent fees. Maybe going to have legal fees. Maybe going to have accountancy fees. Maybe once in a blue moon when you get your final return done. And then you just put them in every single month. And you've got columns in your spreadsheet. You've got a January, you've got a February, you've got a March, you've got an April, you've got a May, going all the way up to the end of the year. Okay? And then you put totals in the end, and it totals it up automatically on the spreadsheet. So you've got a total for your rent, you've got a total for each month, and it totals all up. And then that's what you put on your tax return.
Yeah. Do you know?
But you can do that every single month.
Doing that every month won't take a lot of time and won't obviously take a lot of stress to do. But even to do that whole spreadsheet within the space of a couple of weeks is going to be a lot worse and a lot stressful.
Absolutely. And if the tax man then comes back to you and says, wait a minute, that's a big number for you. You know, something like you've done a huge refurb and your rent's only maybe, 10,000 a year, but your refurb's 20,000. And they go, well, what was that refurb? You can go to your spreadsheet and you know where where the refurb was done, maybe January. So then you go to your file, it says January, your bits of receipts, and you look in and you find the totals for the receipts. And then you just say to them, well, there's all the receipts for it. Done and dusted.
Yeah.
Job done. And if you do that, you'll have no problem with your tax.
Yeah. So that's a really methodical way to do it, and probably obviously the best way to do it.
If you do it before September, I believe. So in other words, if the tax year end is, if you're self-employed, for example, and you're just a sole trader, in other words, it's in your name. If you do it before September of the year end in April, so year end April, and do it before September and submit that to the tax man, I'm sure he calculates your tax for you.
Yes.
Or she, they do that automatically for you. If you wait till January the next year, then you've got to do it yourself.
Yeah.
Which is the hassle. And then that's when you maybe just want to you've got all your receipts, you've got everything done, you've done all your bookkeeping anyway, so you don't need to bother, and you've got it in a spreadsheet. All you do is send your spreadsheet to your accountant and you say, could you do my tax return based on that spreadsheet? That's it.
Yeah.
And the accountant does it for 50, 100 quid.
I was just going to say it's got about 60 quid or something for an accountant to do that.
It'll be nothing. And the great thing is that's tax deductible as well.
Yeah.
So you're getting work done from an accountant. It's deductible. So you're maybe spending 60 quid. If you're a higher rate taxpayer, you're essentially just 30 quid, more than likely, that you're only paying in real terms, because you're getting a deduction on that 60 quid that you've spent for the accountant. So it's very efficient way to do things. And then you've got plenty of time to do everything else, and you've got no hassle at the last minute. So do everything in advance. make sure it's all done. The great thing as well, if you do that every single month, if you've got a number of buy-to-let properties and then you see your profit actually quite high, and then you work out to yourself before you get to the end of the year, you might end up being in higher rate tax band because your job as well goes on top of that, and you might be paying higher rate on it. You might think, I maybe should do my refurb now, because next year I'm probably going to earn less, which will be basic rate band. I'll maybe do a refurb now that I was going to do next year. I'll do it now, so it brings it down to lower rate band. Therefore, you're paying less tax on it. Therefore, next year you're still paying less tax as well, because you were expected to, no make as much. So if you've made something by accident, made a bit more, and you want to bring it down, then you could do a refurb earlier to bring your tax burden down. And therefore, it's very, very tax efficient and prudent to do that.
In that situation, Jim, say you had a couple of properties and you don't need to do a big refurb, and you've got that extra money, would you say maybe move it into your pension as a way to bring that down? Or
you absolutely nailed it. Yep. You could then think about yourself. You just send your email to your accountant and say, this is where my figures are going to be before the end of the year. This is where my buy-to-let's going to be. So my salary, because you know what your salary is every single month. So this is where I'm going to be salary. This is going to be in terms of my buy-to-let and my profits. How much do I need to put into my pension to bring me back down to lower rate, basic rate payer? And then they'll come back and say, well, you maybe need 5,000, you maybe need 10,000 in your pension, and then that'll bring you down to lower rate payer. So you pay it before the year end, which is before 31st of March. Really, it's the 5th of April, so you're fine. You can wait till the 5th of April if you want and just pay it in before then, because that's the end of the tax year officially. And the new tax year starts on the 6th of April. So if you pay it in before then, therefore you'll be a basic rate payer again. So you're very, very tax efficient in terms of how you do things. So you could use your pension requirements, you could use that. If you're a limited company, you could even possibly keep all the money in the limited company, take it out as dividends instead of a salary. So don't take the salary up to 12,750, which or 12,570 or whatever it is, which is the basic rate allowance. If this is your only income, you get that, and then take the rest out as dividends, which is taxed at 8.75%. No national insurance on dividends, by the way. You still pay tax through your company, which is a corporation tax. So you're still paying the tax, but you're getting more in your hand to doing it that way, by doing it by dividends. You get more in your pocket that way through dividends than you actually do. And that's what we do, Richard, isn't it? So when we come to the end of the year, we pay each other dividends. And it's more tax efficient in terms of how we do things, rather than actually paying a huge amount and getting huge amount of national insurance and all the rest of it on our own earned income. So it's tax efficient for you as a person, but you still pay the same tax overall because your company pays the tax anyway in corporation tax, because dividends aren't a deductible amount, whereas salaries are.
So I think you've clearly demonstrated that you like tax, Jim. But it's good to have a good knowledge of that. I mean, it's kind of, it can get a wee bit complex for a lot of people, and a lot of people don't understand it. But obviously, that was quite a good explanation of that. So, and your Anne-Marie's saying that's really interesting. So there is always somebody that learns something when we talk about tax.
Yeah. Can I quickly say, Gareth actually says there, is it best to live in a rental property while having property? Take equity out and buy again. Yeah, it depends on personal circumstances, Gareth. But that's how I actually started. I started and I used to refinance my house and take out my money from my house and use my house as equity to go and buy another house and go buy another house and go buy another house. And it's very tax efficient, because if it all goes to pot, you just sell the other houses and then put it back in and pay off your mortgage again. Because it's assets you're buying. They're not liabilities. They're not going down in value. They're either staying at value or they're going up in value over the medium to long term.
Yeah. So and I think the way of doing this month to month, obviously, the methodical thinking about your tax return and all your expenditure and things, it really makes you consistently ahead of your tax return, and you have a sense of kind of joy, I think, probably by doing that, and it means you'll be ready for the end of the tax year, well ahead of the deadline, and that will be bliss to running about at the last minute.
You'll be standing in the pub with a pint in your hand, and everybody will be going, "Oh God, I hate to get my tax return done." And you'll be going, "It's done."
And that brings us on.
You'll be thinking, "Your beauty, I've done it."
Yeah, and that brings us on nicely to the next point, which is time and treasuring your time and things. And as we've said before, nobody becomes a landlord or an investor because they desperately want to be doing a lot more admin and paperwork and have a lot more on their plate. So don't get bogged down in anything that you will find unenjoyable. And admin and paperwork and tax returns, that can be. So think about how time is spent doing things, how you spend time doing things yourself. Could you be growing your business? Could you give a little more jobs to contractors and outsource? Could you pass on your tax to your accountant, like we just says? Or employ a managing agent to take care of your portfolio for you? Do you know what I mean?
Your time is the most important thing. You're talking to a property time lord.
I knew you were going to say that.
Because we get property ninjas. Kevin, my friend, Kevin Wright, he's got the property ninjas. They're all about cash flow. They're all about, earning money and all the rest of it. And that's fantastic. But I'm all about time. My whole time was sucked up by my full-time job as a financial accountant, financial controller and a financial director, and running a company in manufacturing as part of the management team. So my time was completely absorbed up by that, and I had no time to do anything else. So I needed to create a vehicle which would actually release my time, which would give me my time back. In other words, would effectively buy my job back, but not rely on me to continually work to do it. Hence the reason why I created what's essentially a financial freedom blueprint, which is a system that can take you from A to B in the most efficient way possible and build you a portfolio of properties which will actually cash flow every single month and actually pay you while it goes up in value. And it doesn't rely on your ability to perform. That's the most important thing. If you're a pilot and your health suffers, you're out of business. Your job, you've just lost your job. I was speaking to somebody with an EasyJet cabin crew, and I was saying, is that true? Because I've always heard that, I've always said that, but is it really true? One strike and you're out. That's it. You fail the health test, you're no longer a pilot. You've lost your job, you've lost your income.
I didn't know that.
If you're a surgeon, could you imagine if you're a surgeon and you're doing some home work at home? Straight through with the saw or the chisel, right into your hand. You're no longer a surgeon. You've just lost your job.
Yeah.
Whatever if something relies on you walking, for example, and you break your leg, and it relies on you having to be able to physically walk, you've lost your job for that period of time. And if you've not got anything if you've not got an employer, if you're employed and you've not got a sick pay scheme, worse if you're self-employed, you're screwed. You've had it. So this is why people buy and invest in buy-to-let, because it is, and get a letting agent to do it as well, by the way. Sometimes you can manage it. If it's only one property, you maybe want to manage it yourself. But if you're a professional, in an industry, or you're a professional in your vocation in terms of what you're doing, then the last thing you want to do is have a call from someone having to manage a property and phone people for contractors and that for one property you're managing. That'll take up all your time. If you're a solicitor that earns £250 an hour, why would you want to do that? To save yourself £60 or £100 a month, and you can make £250 an hour as a solicitor.
Yeah.
That wouldn't make any sense at all. That's why you get somebody to manage the property for you. They might not do it as best as what you are, because they can't make the decisions on the spot like you would make. But if you train them properly and you've got the right people, then they'll be able to do it for you, like what you do for me.
I was just going to say, I mean, unless it's something that I think, right, okay, I need to get approval from you or run it past you. Generally, I just make decisions on your behalf because that we're in the same kind of mindset when it comes to your portfolio.
Absolutely. Laura keeps saying to me when we have our weekly meeting about, but you're getting that, and that's that's this, and you're getting these repairs, and I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about.
That's because I've done that.
All I want to know is the rent up to date, or do we have challenges, or do we need to review the rent? That's the only things I'm bothered about. Is the rent up to date? That's it, because you guys take care of all the rest. Interesting. Anne Marie says, would you recommend buy to let near where you live? 100% yes.
Fife as a whole, it's a good.
100% yes. Because my fail safe has always been, in the worst case scenario, if anything drastic happened in terms of the economy and costs escalated so much that you had to take the property management back because that's the only thing that you could save on in order to survive, then you could. Whereas if you've got it halfway, you know, the other end of the country, you're not going to be able to pop around to do anything, are you?
No.
It's literally, I'll have to get in a plane and come up and see you in order to change the light bulb. So that's why you always want it. Plus the fact is, people don't realise there's acres of diamonds right in front of them. Right below their feet, there's acres of diamonds.
Yeah.
Just ready to be dug up. All these houses about them, all these refurbs they could do and properties that they've got, but they see the shiny penny from away. And Aberdeen's the classic example just now. Aberdeen's on it tanked and it's on its knees just now in terms of the property market. You're getting really cheap property and everybody's piling in, refurbing, refinancing and renting just now. But it's no manageable. It's not manageable. You can't take it back if you're down in Fife because you've literally got a 2-hour trip, a 4-hour trip, just to go and do something or see a tenant. No, I mean you could on Zoom and stuff like that, but if anything goes wrong, you're screwed. If the tenant's playing up or your antisocial behaviour, and you've got to visit the property, you've had it. That's the problem.
I'm just looking at Amarie's next comment there. Amarie, my direct email address is in this, attached to this, so feel free to drop me an email and we can have a chat.
Is there any advice on where to get an agent, what to look out for? Yes, speak to Richard first, Anne-Marie. We do know where you are. You're not in our area, but we can invest in Fife if you want. That's an easy enough one to do. Or we can refer you to another agent outside of the area, outside of our area. We know, maybe another letting agent that we know because we're in all the right networks together. So time is the most important thing, and it's all about buying back your time and getting a vehicle that will be able to do that, but won't rely on your ability to perform.
Yeah, definitely.
That then leads nicely onto the fact that it allows you to focus on the future, doesn't it?
Yeah, focusing on the future. I think always thinking ahead is quite important. And I think as new technology comes along and expectations from tenants rise, and it really is essential to kind of future-proof your investment, so it consistently attracts premium tenants, and you've got the right rent levels, and thinking about all these aspects that make, and we're going to see it, your investment profitable, and you have a really functioning buy-to-let portfolio. If that, and that benefits the tenant and you. So thinking ahead is a really good strategy, and always have that. Don't just let people procrastinate and things, but think ahead, be proactive. Because maybe like a few £100 can add thousands in value if you act on something thinking ahead rather than wait till the last minute.
Yeah, here's a good example of this, Richard. A few £100 could be spent to add a lot of value. I had a property which had a room which was the whole width of the property itself. In other words, a front window and a rear window. But the room could be subdivided because it was that big. It was basically 2 massive double rooms in one big room altogether. So what I did was I put a stud partition, like the council houses have been built, with the bedroom off the back of the living room.
Yeah.
So I put a stud partition up, and you know the one I'm talking about.
I was trying to think but I know what
159.
Yeah, I know what I know.
And I put a stud partition up there. It literally cost me £600, and I created another bedroom. And another bedroom at that time was worth another £100 a month, £1,200 a year for £600 investment.
Yeah.
And because it was now a 3-bedroom, the value of the property actually went up as well. For £600, that's all it cost me to do that. So a payback of 6 months and an increase in value of round about another £10,000 on the price of the property at that time, which I bought for, drum roll, £17,000.
I was going to say 15, but yeah, I mean,
probably £17,000 at that time. It was a long time ago, but I put another 10 grand on the property. And today, that property is probably worth round about 70, I would say. But that's how to do it. That's the best way to do it in terms of maximising. So that few £100 can add thousands in value, and plenty of jobs can be done in a few hours while your tenants are at work as well, so you can upgrade without interrupting your income.
Yeah, that's a good point as well, because a lot of things can be done if you've got tenants in situ. Work around them. A lot of tenants will be out at work most of the day. If they have contractors to get on and do things, it's less interruption for them. It's then obviously benefiting them, plus it's benefiting you. So yeah, look at the opportunities to do these kind of changes and things as well. And low cost value adding jobs include maybe radiators is a good one. We just done radiators in one of yours, upgrading radiators to more efficient ones for the older style, replacing taps and mixer taps in the holes with a decent shower, swapping out old-fashioned, do you know, like if there's hot plates and things in there, and putting in a more
induction
up-to-date
hobs and gas hob as well.
Yeah.
So this is how I look at it for my tenants. Personally, for me, and I think most people will agree with this, most landlords out there, I think most landlords do agree with this.
Yeah.
I'll look at a house and I think, would you live in that property yourself? And if the answer to that is yes, then you've done it right. And the tenant will find it really nice and they'll be happy. They'll be happy tenants. That's it. Happy customers, happy clients. If you don't think you would live in that property, then I wouldn't be renting it. I would just sell it and then buy another property or do something to it to make it rentable. And so you would accept it yourself. Because I wouldn't accept a shower in a property that's basically a wee drip coming at the top. I like a good quality shower. I wouldn't accept the fact that, you know, radiators have been like 5 or 6, you know, levels of paint. So you basically touch the radiator and there's no heat coming out at all. It's lukewarm. And yet your heating's on full blast and you're like, how's the house no heating up? That's why. So I would be replacing the radiators as well. I wouldn't accept that myself. So why should I expect anybody else, especially the tenants, to accept it as well? Energy efficiency as well. You know, smoke detectors, heat detectors, these are a natural requirement. If your kitchen's falling apart, it's like, you know, would you accept the kitchen falling apart in your house? Possibly not, even though my kitchen is falling apart in my house, but I'm all right with that. It's my house. I'll put up with a lot more things I wouldn't expect my tenants to put up with, believe it or not. Yeah. So I wouldn't expect it. I wouldn't expect my tenant to put up with it. And I wouldn't put up with it in normal terms if I was renting it. Because remember, the tenant's paying you money for a service. This is like going to a car showroom and paying for a brand new car, and it arrives on your doorstep with a big dent in the door. And the boy says, "What's wrong with that?" Yeah. It's like, I paid for a brand new car. Why am I not getting a brand new car? And it's the same when you're a landlord, and you know your tenant expects quality. They expect what they've paid for.
Yeah. There's levels of expectations on both sides. The tenant of the landlord of the tenant, and indeed the agent as well, if they're involved. And I think you really need to manage everybody's expectations and have things at a certain level. And then that leads us into cultivating connections and relationships with each other. And when you work with tenants and contractors and things, a lot really comes down to their experience of dealing with you, whether it's the landlord or whether I'm referring to the letting agent like myself, as well as the financial transactions and things. So it pays to nurture those relationships and have good relationships with your tenants, with your contractors, and everybody's kind of on the same page. And that's a really harmonious situation. It's not, do you know, when you don't want confrontation, and if there is, there's a problem there. If you've got confrontation with a tenant or a contractor, or indeed all three.
Very rare, Richard. We've never really had that confrontation with our tenants.
No, I've got really good relationships with all the tenants.
Because you get to know your tenants.
Yeah.
You know, this is a symbiotic relationship, and the fact that, you know, you're renting to someone. They are a customer. I call them a client, because a customer is somebody that just comes and buys off you once. A client is somebody you look after for the rest of their life. Yeah. And if they're choosing to rent and they just don't want to own, then you want to make sure they're looked after, and you want to make sure they get the best, because they're even somebody. I had someone, and I always remember this story. I was horrified with this story when I sat in a tenant and residents association meeting, and I was sitting there and I went along and I was trying to get some feedback from some people, and I was sitting next to this elderly lady, and I said to her, you know, what's your property like right now? And she was going on, you know, well, it's probably got a wee bit of damp condensation, but I've said to the landlord about the damp and condensation. And then her next phrase came out of her mouth, says, but I get my rent gets paid by the government, so I really don't want to bother the landlord too much because I'm not paying the rent.
Well, what?
What? Yeah, and I was appalled that she actually thought like that, and I went, no. Just let's get this right.
Yeah.
You're given money from the government to help you with your rent. You're paying it to the landlord to look after you as a result. Therefore, you should expect to have the same delivery of service at somebody, in her opinion, because if somebody worked and paid themselves out their own pocket, according to her, she says they should get better service. And I'm like, no, 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 no. That's not how it works. They should give you the exact same service that they should give someone else. Who's that landlord? By the way, it was a social housing provider, just in case anybody got on their high horse and thought it was a private rented sector.
So that's terrible.
But
I think
it shows you
that.
that's a message I remember over all that time, and these things stick in my mind, and they are the reasons why I became a landlord. I was just appalled at the way some tenants were treated by their landlords at that time when I first started 30 years ago. It was just appalling. But I'm equally appalled by the way tenants are treated by their social landlords as well, by housing associations, by the council, the responses that they get. And that's why we often take them out of the council house or the social house and house them in the private rented sector. And that's why they do that, because they get a far better quality and far better finish, because we are customer led.
Yeah.
Social landlords, sometimes they've not got that way. They're like, they got a bit complacent, some of them in the past, where it was like more, well, what are you complaining about? You're getting a cheap rent. And that's not the attitude to have.
That's not the attitude to have. Definitely not. And I think that's all. It all comes back to having a certain level of respect for everyone involved, tenants and your contractors and things. And I think, like we say about having relationships and connections, it's dropping maybe your contractors or your tenants at the odd message, just maybe of appreciation or just recognition or just to check in. Whether it's Happy New Year, for instance, or something. It's a perfect way to build and maintain reciprocal good feelings between everybody involved in the process, and it just makes the whole thing a lot more pleasurable and enjoyable to do. I mean, I have tenants who are really appreciative of what we do and who we are, and sometimes they wouldn't even dream of using a landlord that's self-managed because they love using us as a management agent so much. I mean, I've heard that a lot. And a lot of people say, I wouldn't rent anywhere else, I want to stay with you guys. That's because we've built up such a good relationship.
But finally, that relationship shouldn't be a forced relationship. It shouldn't be. You shouldn't be forcing yourself to cultivate this relationship.
No.
This should be you as a person. This should really be you as a person. And if you're not that type of person, and this is a forced relationship, in order, for want of a better word, to take advantage of the tenant, it's like you shouldn't be a landlord. You shouldn't be an investor. You shouldn't be in this business at all, I would say.
Yeah, you should have that natural thing in you to have that, be empathetic and compassionate to people. I think.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good way to say empathetic, compassion.
You referenced there that tenant in that forum, Jim, that mentioned about she had an issue with damp or condensation, and she reported it and things. And that brings us on to obviously preempting problems and identifying things like that before they become an issue. And that really comes down to, I mean, pre-tenancy and mid-tenancy inspections and things are quite important. And I know inspections have become so difficult for letting agents and things on the back of lockdown and things. People have just had such a knock-on effect with access and things. But if you're not getting into the property, make a point of getting in and start doing that and really pushing for that, because it's so important. There's no better way to spot potential problems and have them rectified or dealt with early or before they turn into a crisis and something that you could really have a problem on your hands with.
Yeah. This is where costs go out of control for a letting agent. This is where a lot of labour's lost and efficiencies are wasted, because the tenant sometimes doesn't give you access, even though you've arranged access. Therefore, it's a missed visit and it costs an absolute fortune. If that tenant is on housing benefit or local housing allowance, what it's called now, under universal credit, and they're subsidised by the government and they can't afford anything else, you can't exactly say to them, you've missed your appointment, as per our agreement, we're going to charge you 40 quid because you've missed the appointment without actually rescheduling it. You can't do that because you can't get off them. So therefore, there's another thing that the letting agent has to absorb. So see how that can easily cascade. And then it comes to the point where the letting agents basically, they'd be better paying you the money as a landlord to do it yourself. They'd be better paying you the money to go away and do it yourself.
Yeah.
Because it's not cost effective to run that tenancy, and that's why it becomes very difficult for letting agents to do.
Yeah, it has become a challenge for a lot of agents, and it does become very time consuming and costly. But we did do a previous blog which is on mid-tenancy inspections. I've put the link in there. That gives a really comprehensive checklist of what to actually do when you do an inspection, and it helps you look how to save time and hassle and expense of dealing with things once it's too late. That's quite a good one. So mid-tenancy inspections. A previous blog, the link's attached to this if you want to go in and have a look at that as well.
Number 8.
Yep.
Learn the law.
Definitely.
All 170 pieces of legislation.
Yeah.
Learn the whole lot for one property that you own. That's what you have to do. This is why most people will get a letting agent, because they don't want to learn 170 pieces of legislation. And by the way, that's just when the tenants moved in.
Yeah.
It's not even before they actually move in. There's a lot of legislation before that as well. I mean, a lot of it you'll never encounter, but you still need to know it in some shape or form, and you still need to be, I would say you still need to be qualified. I'll be honest, I genuinely think every single landlord in the whole of the UK, if not the world, should have some sort of formal qualification for being a landlord.
Yeah, I agree. I think, like you
Because
said,
then at least we know the standards will be reputable. At least we know that the tenant will be looked after in the correct way, and the proper procedures will be followed when necessary. It's not a popular opinion among landlords, obviously, because they don't want to use letting agents. But I think at some point in time that every single landlord will have to use a letting agent, and every single letting agent will have more encumbrant legislation on them in order to make sure the standards are even higher in terms of the tenants' welfare.
Yeah, and it's certainly not money for old rope, as we referenced earlier, that people say. It's become a very specialised area to be a managing agent, or indeed a landlord who self-manages, because you need to have this knowledge and learn the law, or you're really leaving yourself wide open to obviously letting yourself be. You could be penalised very, very obviously heavily if you do things wrong against the law in certain areas of lettings. And I mean, we spend a lot of time keeping on top of the legislation so that our landlords don't have to worry about that. But if you're managing things yourself, you can't afford to fall behind on the latest changes, and things are changing very frequently. So the latest changes you can't afford to just ignore or not keep up to date on if you're self-managing. There are hefty fines for non-compliance. So you need to really bookmark maybe landlord forums or maybe the government websites. If you're a self-managing SAL, Scottish Association of Landlords, is really good. So you could check back for updates and how things have been changing. It's much easier with an agent by your side, I have to say. But if you choose to self-manage, please be part of one of these governing bodies, or have someone you could refer to that's going to assist you in a situation where you're thinking, right, what do I do here? And what you need to know by the law.
See the amount of misinformation it's put on landlord forums when people ask questions. You can ask one question and you'll get about 20 different answers to that question. When the only one of them is actually right, what does that tell you? It's almost like the blind leading the blind in the private rented sector sometimes. And it's very, very worrying.
I often look at these forums and things, and sometimes somebody will put up a question, and I'll know the answer 9 times out of 10. I'm not going to say I'm perfect, and I'll think I know it, and I'll read the responses, and I'm like, that's wrong. And you have a few jump in and like, this is what, and I'm like, that's right. But it's just so much mixed information. If I am ever in doubt of something, or any of my team, we go to the Scottish Association of Landlords and say, right, could you clarify for us? This is what we're thinking. Is this right or is this wrong? What do we do in this situation? And that is by the letter of the law, and we know that that's right. But yeah, forums are quite concerning sometimes when you read the responses to questions.
Definitely. Number 9 for me is go paperless. So ditch the paperwork in 2024 by going fully digital, either scanning or taking photographs of tenancy agreements, certificates and receipts. So you can just keep it all online, so you don't actually have physical copies. You can get everything done by DocuSign and Adobe, and stuff does all that. If you're a bigger landlord, but your letting agent will probably do all that for you anyway. If you've got a letting agent, you'll have all electronic signatures and everything. And then create folders for each year, either on your computer or in the cloud, and divide them into subfolders of receipts, certificates, guarantees, and contracts for optimal organisation and ease. If you can do that, when somebody comes back to you, ask you a question, especially a local authority. So when you come to landlord registration, every 3 years in Scotland, you're asked to renew your registration as a landlord. Sometimes they'll say, can I get the documents for that property, this property, that property, and that property, and that property? Can you give all these documents? And then you could go, if you've got them all sitting in a pile somewhere, it's like they're no organised. It's like, oh my God, I've got to dig all these out. You could have a serious problem on your hands. So please make sure you organise everything properly so you can put your hands on everything whenever you need it. I think most people are surprised about, when it comes to me, for example. When I start to do things financially or put an application into the bank to corporate lending or anything like that, they say, right, okay, you've got to fill all this out. And almost within the next couple of hours, it's like, there you go. It's like, and the folk are going, how on earth did you put your hands on all that information? It's like, I've got it all electronically held, and it's all in the same place. And I keep an eye on it all the time to make sure everything works smoothly and make sure my business runs properly. So definitely go paperless. Number 10, I think the final one is what? Ponder your purpose.
Yeah, I think with everything that's changed recently and in the recent years, and everything will just run through there, and maybe a lot of people will ponder their actual purpose, and it's good to do that. And I think you really need to look at, why are you a landlord or an investor? Why did you start in the first place? And is it the same reason now? And have that thought process. It's good to really have a thought and recalibrate about why you're doing things and your purpose in doing it. I mean, is it to give up your day job? Is it to have financial security in your retirement? Is it to leave a legacy for your family? I know that's one of your main factors, Jim, as well. So really think about that and keep that in mind, because sometimes you could get sidetracked by everything that goes on and everything that's discussed and spoken about and everything that's put on your plate as a landlord or investor. Just to refocus, and at the turn of the year is a good time to do that. Like we say, focus on your future, and really ponder what your purpose is.
Yeah, it's quite. I'm laughing at Instagram because I'm looking at Instagram now, and he's sitting saying that it's like spot on, Jim. We're the same. If we wouldn't live in it ourselves, then why should the tenant? And then he actually says as well, or she says, my kitchen's falling apart in my own home as well. It's about 30 years old. But it just shows you. Just shows you. You will. People like us, and I'll talk about this person on Instagram as well. People like us, we will do without in order for our tenants to have a better quality of life. That's because remember, that is ultimately the goal. The goal is to create a vehicle which will look after you for the rest of your life, and not have your input into it. So I think that's the most. And this all comes back to pondering your purpose. Why are you a landlord? It's legacy. I mean, you have to keep this answer in the forefront of your mind every single time. When thinking about, when you get advice about how you'll achieve these goals. And is it selling up ultimately, expanding your portfolio, or making upgrades, or to increase your income? You've got to have this at the forefront. I actually, and I haven't shared with you yet, Richard, because we were going to talk about this in the Wealth Creation Show. But somebody came onto my feed the other day because it's New Year, and I actually looked at the messages they sent. And 2 years ago, I sent them a message, and they asked me, "What do you think your goals are for, the coming years?" And I went to buy 50 properties. That's spooky, isn't it? Because I'm in the process of doing that.
But that just proves that that's what you had in your mind, and that was what you were working towards. So
So and then also, obviously, the other one was me to create a foundation which actually looks after the community and reinvests in the community, which we have. I mean, I'll talk about it now because, we've given 28,000. We've actually done more because it was the Crosnest Trust that reminded me I actually did fundraising, but I don't class that as what we've given. That was me fundraising for them, about 3,000. So really it's 31,000. But out of our profits, we've actually given 28,000 towards a local community and events in the Fife area. But over the last 6 years, that's 128,000 we've given back into our community. £128,000. That's an astronomical figure to reinvest back into your community. But this is one of the purposes that I set up in the first place. I want some sort of social enterprise as a legacy for me. I want to have that. I want to do that for my community. I continue to do what I do for the people that I work with, like yourself, Richard, as well, for my community I'm involved with, and more importantly, to set an example for other people to follow. It would be great. I tell you what, it'd be great to have every single business as social enterprises.
It would.
But that's just not the nature of the world. Unfortunately, the Gordon Gekko, the greed is good, does come into some people. and whereas I look at, and I say to a lot of people that have been very wealthy, well, there's only so much you can make and the rest is just for show. So do you really want to show? Because showing off is just to impress people that probably you don't like. and to show off something and look at me all the time just tells me straight away that you need affirmation from other people to keep yourself centered, and that is quite a worrying situation. And we talk about this on Wealth Creation Show all the time about the fact that you need likes and you need affirmation from people outside of you rather than being able to be comfortable in your own skin. Then there's something deep down that's happened to you that you need to resolve in your past.
Well, I was going to actually plug the Wealth Creation Show, and it's good that you talk about it there, Jim, because obviously they're both educational, but we go a lot kind of deeper in the Wealth Creation Show sometimes into like personal circumstance. And that the story you were telling about the pilot and the surgeon and things earlier, when you talk about their body as their tool, well, that kind of ties really well with what we're going to talk about on Monday, which is sharpen your saw, and it's all about looking after the tool that really, things, it's yourself, it's your mind, it's your body and things. So sharpen your saws on Monday in the Wealth Creation Show at 12:30. That'll be a really good one. That's what we're talking about then. And like we just said to Anne-Marie earlier in this, if you are wanting to ask any questions about what we spoke about today, if you want any advice about managing a property, or even just any of the points we spoke about for setting up yourself for the year ahead, then my email address is in the blog attached, so feel free to drop me an email.
Perfect. Thanks very much. Really enjoyed that show.
Yeah, so did
really,
I. Thanks for that, Jim.
I love the shows, Richard, because it's really soul searching, plus the fact that reaffirms what you're here for and what your commitment is towards moving ahead. And it's a great opportunity to relearn and refocus and help you keep that focus. I think that's what I loved. That's what I love doing about the shows. About
I like that as well. It does give you that. Yeah.
It keeps you centered, it keeps you on track, especially Wealth Creation Shows as well that we do on Monday. That's a great learning opportunity for us both, and people that listen into that as well, and people later on, and it's timeless content that it can be repurposed and reused elsewhere. And I think overall it's a process of a rising tide lifts all ships.
Yes.
And everybody helping everybody else in order to better themselves, in order to improve themselves, in order to move forward, in order to have a better quality of life. Because ultimately, it's better quality of life. My heart bleeds for people that have to live on the street. Just sitting in a shop corner, it's like I still carry. This is I still carry. It's not for the shops. It's actually to give away for people that are in need. When I'm out in the streets, it's like that's why I carry money in my pocket. This is literally sitting in my pocket for quite a while. I've given away a few, because we visited Edinburgh recently. And then I just replenish it and then just do it again. But that's the only reason I carry money. Everything else is paid for by card for my own self personally. And I often thought to people on the streets, it's like, get a card reader. You'd make give them a card reader. They'd make a fortune. Because people genuinely, honestly, obviously they're of the mindset they don't think like that. They're just, this is all about survival for them. But genuinely, if shelter and all that had a bit of sense, they would actually just give them card readers. Because if they gave them card readers to just basically say to people, can you help? Card reader, everybody would be out with their card. You know, the RLNI have one and right on their window at their place and answer that. And it just basically, if you swipe your card at the window, it literally takes a £5 off or something like that. And that's it. A set amount. It takes a £5 off if you swipe your card on it. And it's a great way to fundraise.
You set an amount, yeah.
So what could that do for people? Because we'll all just use cards now. And it's the first thing, a lot of people do want to give to other people in need. But the difficulty is when you go past, it's like, God, I've got no money. I've just got cards.
I know, I never carry cash anymore.
So genuinely, I think most of these organisations that help people on the streets and to help them move forward should just give them card readers. Just a thought. Closing remarks.
Yeah, closing remarks. But no, that was a really good show. So thanks for that, Jim. And thanks for everybody that's joined in and interacted with us this morning. And you'll catch it on the Rerun podcast and things as well. And it's on the playlist on YouTube. And that's us for this morning. So thanks for that, Jim. And I'll just finish there. Thanks.